Hey, I've got a question for you. Did any of you grow up on a farm? Or maybe you grew up surrounded by farms? Where we live in Indiana, we're not on a farm, but our backyard backs up into a massive field. And you see in the spring when the seeds get planted, and then over the summer they grow, whether it's corn or wheat or often soybeans out here, and then there's the harvest in the fall. You know, in our modern society, when we want a loaf of bread, we go to a Panera Bread or we go to a grocery store and we just get a loaf of bread. And it might just seem like loaves of bread fall from out of the sky, but actually seeds of grain had to be planted and they had to grow and then they had to be harvested. And then those harvested grains had to be turned into bread. What God's going to say here in verse 10 of 2 Corinthians 9 is an analogy. And here's the analogy. The seeds are the dollars that God entrusts to you. The harvest is when you plant those seeds into the kingdom of God. And the promise is that when you plant your seeds into the kingdom of God, which is dollars here, but it can also be your time, it can also be your talent, your energy, your prayers, your emotions. You invest it in the kingdom of God, it brings a harvest, and then this unique promise, then God will give you more seeds to plant, more time, or more energy, or more talent, or in this context, more money, so that you can then plant that as well. Here's the promise. For God is the one who provides seed for the farmer. And then, as a result of God's blessing on that seed, the weather and everything else, God provides the bread to eat. In the same way, God will provide your resources and increase your resources when you're giving, and then produce a great harvest of generosity in you. This is rich. We got to spend a couple days on this. There's so much here because we tend to think the great harvest is through us. We'll talk about that today. But tomorrow we'll talk about the harvest is in us. What does that mean? Well, the harvest through us. Let's just focus on that today. You give your money to the work of God as an act of faith to increase your love for God, to place Christ above all. Souls come to know God. There's a harvest. And then those souls, they go tell others. When you get to heaven, you're overwhelmed at the eternal wealth that you essentially stored up in heaven by exchanging disposable gold, silver, land, money, whatever it is on earth, it's going to burn up someday. It's all plastic silverware. Every house, every luxury car, every piece of property is really plastic silverware. It's meant to be used. It's not meant to be clung to. Could you imagine if you just clung to your plastic silverware? It's disposable. And so we use disposable wealth to store up eternal treasure. And what this promise here is that as we do that, then God will give us more disposable wealth or time or talent, whatever, so that we can then invest that as well. We know that brings a harvest of saved souls. Tomorrow, let's talk about the harvest that happens in us. I'll talk to you then.